The stranger in the marketplace, the twin suns of Lumeris, burned above the dusty sky, spreading golden light across the floating city of Rhine. Crowds of aliens moved through the glowing market streets, selling crystals, fruits, machines, and strange glowing pets. Among them walked a human man named Elias. His brown jacket faded, his boots old from long travel. He was a repair engineer, known for fixing things that others gave up on. Most aliens ignored him. Some whispered behind him, calling him Deathworlder, a name both feared and respected, but Elias didn't care. He only wanted to earn enough credits to leave this planet and find peace somewhere quiet. The market was loud, filled with voices and smells of spices and metal. He passed a stall where silver gas lamps floated, another where a vendor sold robotic birds that sang real songs. Then he saw her, a small alien child sitting alone beside a broken toy. She was small, maybe 6 in human years, with pale blue skin and large silver eyes that shimmered with light. Her hands trembled as she tried to fix the toy sphere, but it was too complex for her tiny fingers. The crowd moved around her, not one soul stopping, not one hand helping. Elias watched her for a moment, feeling a strange pull in his heart. Something about her loneliness reminded him of the children he once saw on Earth before the wars. He walked closer and crouched beside her. "What's wrong, little one?" he asked softly, his voice kind. The girl looked up, surprised, her eyes wide, her thin ears twitching at the sound of his human accent. She didn't answer, only held the broken toy toward him. It was a small glowing sphere, cracked on one side, its inner light fading. Elias smiled gently. "Let me see." He took a small toolkit from his pocket, opened the sphere carefully, and began to work. Tiny gears, wires, and energy cells lay inside. It looked like an ancient device from pre-war times. Not something a normal child would have. Still, Elias focused. Using his skill and patience, minutes passed, the sounds of the market fading around them. Finally, the toy flickered, then came alive, glowing with bright starlight again. The child gasped, her face lighting up like dawn. Her silver eyes shone and she smiled, a smile so pure and innocent it made Elias forget where he was. She held the toy close, then whispered something in her soft alien tongue. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. Gratitude. Elias chuckled, wiping dust from his hands. "There you go, all fixed." The girl tilted her head, studying him curiously. Then she reached forward and touched his hand. Her skin was cool, smooth, glowing faintly. For a second, everything around him went silent, like the whole world held its breath. Then, as if nothing happened, the child giggled and ran off into the crowd. Her toy glowing in her hands, Elias watched her disappear. Feeling oddly peaceful, he stood, looked around, and noticed something strange. The crowd was staring at him. Every alien in the market had stopped talking. Some stepped back, others bowed their heads and hurried away. A merchant whispered something in fear. Pulling down his stall curtains, Elias frowned, confused. What's wrong with everyone? But no one answered. Even the city guards who passed nearby gave him cold, frightened glances. He felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. Later that evening, Elias sat in his small workshop on the edge of the city. He replayed the scene in his mind. The smile of the child, the glow of the toy, the sudden silence. Something about that moment didn't feel normal. He looked at his hands, still remembering the faint warmth of her touch. His door creaked as an old alien neighbor peeked inside. "Human," the old one hissed softly. "What did you do?" Elias frowned. "I just helped a little girl fix her toy." The old alien's eyes widened in horror. "You touched her." Elias blinked. "What?" "She's just a child." The alien backed away, trembling. "That was no child, human. That was the daughter of the Eternal Queen." Elias froze, his heartbeat loud in his ears. "The Queen?" he repeated, unsure if he heard right. The alien nodded quickly, looking around in fear. "You should leave this place before sunrise." Then he vanished into the night. Leaving Elias alone with his thoughts, he stared at the flickering light of his lamp. His mind racing, he had come here only to earn some credits. Not to anger a royal family, but deep down, he couldn't regret what he did. He remembered that smile, innocent and bright. Something pure in a dark galaxy. He whispered to himself, how can helping a child be a crime? Outside, the twin suns of Lumeris set behind the shining towers. The city grew quiet. The winds carried soft whispers across the metal streets. Far above, in the royal palace of crystal and gold, a young princess held her glowing toy close. She looked out the window and whispered to her mother. He was kind. Mama. And the Queen of Lumeris opened her eyes in silence, her gaze turned toward the distant city below. She whispered, "Find the human." And so, as Elias slept unaware, the Queen's royal ships began to move through the clouds by morning. The quiet marketplace would never be the same again. The rumors begin the twin suns rose slowly above the city of Rhine, painting the floating towers in pale gold. Elias woke to the sound of distant engines and the faint hum of the energy shields around the colony. He rubbed his eyes, unaware that his name was already being whispered through every corner of the city. Outside, markets were half empty. Guards patrolled with silent urgency, and hovering drones scanned the streets for something, or someone. Elias walked to the market as usual, carrying his small toolbox. But something felt off. People stared at him, then turned away quickly, whispering in low, frightened tones. A vendor he knew for months refused to serve him, muttering, "Please, leave before they see you here." Elias frowned, confused. Who? The vendor only shook his head and pulled down his stall curtain. Hiding behind it, he sighed, walking toward his workshop, not knowing that small crystal transmitters were already recording his every step. At midday, 2 guards in silver armor landed near his door. They didn't speak, they just scanned the place, their glowing visors reflecting his face. Elias tried to ask what was going on, but they left without answering. Disappearing into the sky, he stood there in silence, heart pounding. When he returned inside, he saw something written on his door in faint glowing letters. Alien script, but familiar from the markets. He translated it with his wrist scanner and froze. It said, "The Queen knows your name." His hands trembled. What does that even mean? He whispered. The same moment, the air shimmered, and a holographic broadcast appeared above the city center. A tall alien figure in royal armor appeared, her voice echoing, "Attention, citizens of Lumeris," the announcement began. "Her Radiance, the Eternal Queen, seeks the one called Elias, the human engineer." Elias's heart sank. He stared at the glowing image, watching as thousands of aliens bowed their heads in reverence. The Queen's voice continued, "He has touched the royal child, an act forbidden for all life forms under the crown's protection." The message ended, leaving behind an image of Elias's face projected across the sky. He stumbled backward, disbelief written across his face. "I just fixed her toy," he whispered to himself. But reason didn't matter now. Within hours, bounty hunters and informants filled the city, each hoping to gain favor with the palace. Some aliens shut their doors when Elias passed. Others whispered prayers as if death itself walked beside him. By evening, the tension grew heavier. Strange lights flickered in the sky, and ships of royal design circled above the colony. Elias could see their golden insignia, the mark of the Queen's personal fleet. He packed his tools, ready to flee to the outer desert. But before he could leave, a soft knock came at the door. He opened it slowly and saw a figure cloaked in silver cloth, her face hidden. "Are you Elias, the human?" The voice asked quietly. "Yes," he replied, his guard raised. She looked around nervously before stepping inside. "I'm not here to harm you," she whispered. Pulling down her hood, her skin glowed faintly, her eyes bright blue. She was from the royal attendants caste. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I serve the Queen's daughter." Elias stared in confusion. "You mean the little girl from the market?" Lyra nodded quickly. "Yes, and she has not stopped speaking of you." Elias frowned. "Then why are they hunting me?" Lyra sighed, her expression full of fear. "Because no outsider has ever touched the royal child, not even her teachers, not even the Queen's guards." He blinked. "Touched? I just fixed her toy." Lyra shook her head. "When she smiled at you, something else happened." Elias stared. "What do you mean?" The woman looked out the window, her voice trembling. "The Queen believes her daughter saw something in you, something dangerous or divine." He took a deep breath. "That's absurd." But deep inside, a small memory flickered. The moment when the child touched his hand and everything went silent, the world holding its breath. For a second he had felt warmth, but also something strange, like energy moving through his veins. Lyra handed him a small metallic cube glowing faintly blue. "She told me to give you this," she said. "She said you'd understand." Elias took it and looked at the cube. It was warm to the touch, pulsing gently. When he pressed a button, a small projection appeared, the little princess smiling, holding the glowing toy. Her voice echoed softly. "Thank you, Elias, for fixing my light." His throat tightened. But before he could say a word, alarms blared outside. Royal patrol ships were landing nearby, soldiers disembarking in rows. Lyra's eyes widened in panic. "They found you!" Elias grabbed his bag. "There's a back exit through the vents." Lyra followed him as they ran through the narrow metal tunnels beneath the city. The ground shook as ships landed, and the sound of energy rifles filled the air through the vents. Elias saw his small workshop being torn apart by guards searching for him. Flames reflected in his eyes as he whispered, "This has gone too far." Lyra grabbed his arm. "We must leave the city before nightfall." They reached the lower docks where old cargo ships rested unused. Elias climbed aboard one, turning back to Lyra. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Lyra hesitated. "Because the princess believes you're the key to something ancient, something our world has forgotten." Elias stared at her, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. Then she whispered one last thing before disappearing into the shadows. "The queen will come herself. She always comes for what she wants." The engines roared to life, the cargo ship lifting into the dark horizon far above. The royal fleet spread across the sky like golden wings, and deep in her palace, the queen watched through a shimmering crystal screen. Her eyes glowing with strange light, she whispered softly to herself, "Find him alive." Because somewhere in her heart, she already knew the human's touch had changed destiny, and soon, she would see for herself why her daughter smiled that day in the marketplace. The royal ship descends. Night fell over the city of Rhine like a curtain of violet glass. Storm clouds gathered above, glowing faintly under the light of the twin moons. The floating city trembled as powerful engines roared somewhere beyond the horizon. People ran indoors, locking their crystal doors, their voices filled with fear and awe. Only one name passed through every whisper, every shadowed street: the human, the one who touched the royal child. Far out in the black sky, something vast approached. A golden light grew brighter until the clouds themselves began to shimmer. Then, like the birth of a new sun, a massive royal warship emerged from the storm. Its hull was made of pure orium, covered in living runes that pulsed with blue energy. The ship was so huge it blotted out half the stars. It moved with a silence that felt alive, as if the air itself bowed before its presence. Inside that ship, in a throne chamber made of crystal and light, sat the eternal queen of Lumeris. Her tall crown shimmered like fire frozen in motion. Her eyes were bright and ancient, carrying both warmth and storm. Beside her stood her daughter, the small alien child, the one who had smiled at Elias in the market. She held the glowing toy sphere in her hands, watching it pulse gently like a heartbeat. "Mother," she said softly. "He didn't mean harm." The queen turned to her daughter, her voice calm and cold. "The universe rarely means harm, little one, but it still destroys what it touches." The princess frowned, clutching the toy tighter. "He fixed this. He brought light back." The queen's gaze softened for a moment. "Perhaps that is what I must see for myself." Down below in the outskirts of Rhine, Elias's small cargo ship hid among old docking platforms. The rain began to fall. Tapping gently on metal walls, he sat in silence, watching through the viewport as streaks of golden light cut through the dark sky. He knew those weren't stars. They were search ships. He looked at the small cube the child had given him, the faint blue light still glowing. "What did you do, kid?" he whispered, his voice heavy with confusion. He tried to rest, but his heart wouldn't stop racing. He had seen danger before: pirates, mercenaries, smugglers. But this was something far greater. The sky cracked open with thunder as the royal ship descended. Its shadow spread across the entire colony. Every window reflected its golden light. Every building shook under its gravity engines. The citizens knelt on the streets as royal banners unfurled in the wind. The voice of the Queen's herald echoed across the air. By decree of her radiance, all must remain within shelter until further command. Elias could feel the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. He whispered, "They found me." Moments later, bright search drones swept over his ship, scanning every inch. He grabbed his tools and tried to reroute power to the thrusters. But before he could lift off, a blinding beam locked onto his hull, freezing the ship mid-air. Then a mechanical voice spoke. Calm and final, "Do not resist, human." The door burst open as armored guards entered, their eyes glowing beneath their helmets. They aimed their weapons but did not fire. One stepped forward, his voice deep and respectful. "The Queen requests your presence." By her own word, Elias's breath caught. "Requests?" he said with a hint of disbelief. Yes, the guard replied. She said, bring him unharmed. They escorted him outside where the rain turned to golden mist. The air shimmered with energy as a transport beam surrounded them. In an instant, Elias found himself standing on the polished floors of the royal vessel. The corridor around him was alive, walls of crystal breathing faint light. Strange alien symbols glowed under his feet with each step. Guards flanked him on both sides as he was led through wide halls that felt like the inside of a living star. Finally, massive doors opened before him, and he saw the Queen. She sat upon a throne of light and stone, her aura making the air hum softly. The princess stood beside her, still holding her toy, smiling faintly when she saw Elias for a brief moment. The fear inside him eased. He bowed slightly. Unsure what the custom was, the Queen's voice filled the chamber like music made of thunder. You are the human called Elias. He nodded slowly. Yes, Your Majesty. Her gaze was piercing, powerful but not cruel. You touched my daughter. You entered royal ground without permission, and yet she defends you. Elias looked at the child, who stared at him with wide, innocent eyes. He took a breath and said quietly, I didn't know who she was. I just wanted to help. The Queen studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. Our kind does not believe in accidents, human. Every meeting carries purpose. The princess tugged her mother's arm gently, whispering, He made the light come back. Mama? The Queen turned her head slightly, her voice lowering. Yes, and now I must know why. She rose from her throne, walking toward Elias, her steps silent yet commanding. As she stopped before him, the air around her shimmered like starlight trapped in motion. She extended her hand, not in threat, but in something else, something unknown. Show me your hands, she said. Elias obeyed, his palms open. Trembling slightly, the Queen touched his skin, and in that instant, a wave of blue light rippled through the chamber. Guards gasped, the child smiled, and the Queen's eyes widened in shock. She whispered softly, Impossible. Because for the first time in centuries, the ancient sigil of Lumeris glowed faintly on a human's hand. The guards dropped to one knee in confusion and fear. The Queen turned to them sharply. Leave us. As the doors closed, she looked back at Elias, her expression no longer cold but full of wonder. What are you, human? She whispered. Elias stood speechless. His heart pounding, he didn't know what had just happened. Only that something deep and ancient had awoken within him, and far above, outside the ship, lightning danced across the clouds as if the heavens themselves were responding. For the first time in her long reign, the eternal Queen of Lumeris felt uncertainty and awe toward a mortal from Earth. Audience with the Queen, the chamber of light grew quiet after the shock faded. The glowing mark on Elias's palm slowly dimmed, leaving behind a faint pattern that pulsed softly like a heartbeat. The Queen stared at it in silence, her expression unreadable. The air was thick with a strange energy, ancient and alive. The little princess stepped closer, eyes wide, her small hand reaching for Elias's. The Queen's voice broke the silence, calm but cold. Step back, my child. The girl hesitated. But mother. The light liked him. Her mother frowned slightly. The light does not choose, it reacts. Elias stood still. Unsure what to say, he looked at the Queen, then at the glowing floor beneath his boots. I didn't do anything, he said quietly. It just happened when you touched me. The Queen tilted her head, her golden crown reflecting the crystal light. That is exactly what worries me. Human, she replied, her tone sharp but curious. She turned toward her advisors standing in the shadows. Leave us, all of you. The guards bowed and exited, leaving only Elias, the Queen, and the child inside the great crystal hall. The massive doors sealed with a soft hum. For the first time since his capture, Elias felt a strange calm. Not safety, but the feeling that he was standing in something greater than fear. The Queen moved closer, her long robes gliding across the floor like waves of light. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the stars. Do you know what that mark means? She asked softly. Elias shook his head. No idea. Your Majesty. She looked down at his hand again, her gaze thoughtful. It is the sigil of Lumeris, the first light of our ancestors, she said. It appears only to those chosen by the Star Corps, and no off-worlder has ever borne it. Elias frowned. Then why me? The Queen's lips curved slightly. That is what I intend to find out. The little princess tugged on her mother's sleeve, whispering, I told you, Mama, he's kind. The Queen gave her daughter a long look, then sighed softly, her voice losing its edge. Perhaps kindness and fate walk together more often than I thought. Elias smiled faintly, though confusion still clouded his mind. I only fixed her toy, he said again. That's all I did. The Queen studied him with quiet intensity. That toy, she said slowly, is not what you think it is. Elias blinked. What do you mean? The Queen turned, gesturing for him to follow. They walked through a corridor lined with glowing veins of crystal. At the end was a wide balcony overlooking the planet's surface, oceans of silver clouds and glowing rivers below. She pointed to the horizon where energy storms flashed. Our world is dying, she said softly. The light beneath our oceans fades. Our core grows cold. She looked at him again, her tone now almost weary. That toy you fixed was a piece of our ancient heart core, a relic of power lost long before your species left its cradle. Elias stared at her in disbelief. You're saying that toy was part of your planet's power system? The Queen nodded slowly. The child found it years ago, broken, silent, worthless. She looked at her daughter with affection. She called it her starlight, never knowing what it was. Then her gaze turned sharp again. And you, a human, somehow restored it. When none of my scientists could, Elias took a breath, his voice quiet but firm. I didn't use magic. Your Majesty, just logic and a steady hand. The Queen smiled faintly. Logic may be the language of mortals, but sometimes the stars speak through it too. The princess giggled softly, holding her glowing toy between her small hands. See, Mama, I told you he was special, she said proudly. The Queen turned to Elias, her voice calm but with hidden warmth. Special or dangerous, that remains to be seen, she said. You are not a prisoner, human, but you are not free either. Elias nodded slowly. Understanding you want answers. The Queen walked past him, stopping near the edge of the balcony. Her voice grew distant, thoughtful. For centuries, my people believed humans were chaotic, born from pain and war. But perhaps we were wrong. Elias looked at her, his voice soft. Maybe we're just learning to be better. The Queen turned her gaze toward him, and for a moment, something human flickered in her expression. Her daughter climbed onto the low railing beside them, holding her toy close. Can he stay with us, Mama? She asked innocently. The Queen gave a small smile. For now, she said, he stays. Elias felt a mix of relief and confusion. He didn't understand why this royal woman of another world, powerful beyond measure, looked at him as if he carried something precious inside him. That night he was given a room within the palace. It was vast, filled with glowing walls and gentle warmth. He lay awake, staring at the strange stars beyond the transparent ceiling. He thought about the Queen, about her calm voice and the sadness behind her eyes. He thought about the little girl's smile, the same one that started all this. He wondered if he had just saved a child, or stepped into the center of something far greater. Outside, the winds of Lumeris howled softly through the golden towers, and somewhere deep within the palace, the Queen stood alone in her private chamber. Watching the mark still glowing faintly on her hand, she whispered into the silence, if the stars have chosen him, then our fate has already begun to change. The test of intention days passed inside the Palace of Light. Elias lived among walls that breathed energy and whispered secrets older than stars. Guards watched him from a distance, their hands never far from their weapons. He was free to move within certain halls, yet he always felt the weight of unseen eyes. The Queen kept him under observation, her calm mask never revealing what she truly thought. Only the little princess visited him daily, carrying her glowing toy and her endless curiosity. She asked about his home, about Earth, about the blue oceans and the forests of green. Elias told her stories, simple tales of laughter, of wind, of rain falling on glass windows. Her silver eyes sparkled when he spoke. Your world sounds alive, she said one day. Ours only remembers being alive. Her words stayed with him, echoing in the quiet of his room that night. But peace never lasts long under a dying sun. One evening, alarms thundered through the palace halls. Red light filled the corridors, and the hum of engines roared from outside. An attack, swift and violent, struck the capital towers, shaking the city's golden bridges. Elias ran out of his chamber as guards rushed past him, shouting orders in alien tongues through a window. He saw dark ships descending from the clouds, their hulls marked with the symbol of the Vectra rebellion. The Queen's enemies had chosen their moment well. Lightning struck the defense spires, explosions lit the sky. The palace trembled as power flickered. Elias grabbed his toolkit, instincts from his engineer life taking over. He followed the trail of smoke toward the lower levels where the defense control cores were stored. There he found chaos, systems sparking, energy conduits failing. Guards tried to restore them but lacked the technical skill. "Step aside," Elias shouted, his voice firm. They hesitated until one recognized him. "That's the human." But the Queen's command still echoed in their minds. "Bring him unharmed." So they obeyed. Elias opened a control panel. Sparks burning his hands, he rewired the conduits with quick precision. His mind calm under pressure. The ground shook again as another blast hit nearby. Above him, a child's cry echoed through the corridor. The princess, trapped in the upper wing without thinking. Elias dropped his tools and ran. Smoke filled the air, lights flickered, and the sound of crumbling walls surrounded him. He reached the hall just as part of the ceiling collapsed. He saw the little princess hiding under a fallen pillar, clutching her glowing toy tightly. "Hold on," Elias shouted, rushing forward. The air shimmered with debris and heat. He pushed the heavy beam aside, pain slicing through his shoulder. The princess looked up, eyes wide with fear and relief. "Elias!" she cried, reaching for him. He lifted her gently, shielding her from the falling dust. "Stay close to me, little one," he said. Together they ran through the collapsing corridor toward the safer chambers below. Every few steps he looked back, ensuring she was safe. They reached the lower vaults where the heart core pulsed faintly in its chamber. Guards sealed the gates behind them, and for a moment silence returned. The princess trembled, still holding her toy. Elias knelt and smiled weakly. "You're safe now." Before she could reply, a voice echoed behind him, or the Queen's voice, calm but filled with hidden emotion. "You risked your life for her," she said, stepping out of the shadows, her royal armor glowing faintly blue. Elias bowed his head slightly, breathing heavily. "She's just a child, Your Majesty." The Queen studied him for a moment that felt eternal. Then she said softly, "Many see power, few see innocence." The alarms ceased, the rebellion ships retreated, the city's defense system stabilized. Word spread quickly across the empire. The human had saved the royal heir. The people whispered his name with awe. Some called him Protector of Light. Others called him Star-Touched. Elias didn't care for titles. He only cared that the little girl was smiling again. But the Queen was different now, her gaze no longer cold when it met his. She invited him to stand beside her as the palace was repaired. "You acted without fear," she said, "and without expectation." Elias shrugged lightly. "Where I come from when someone needs help. You don't think, you move." The Queen looked away, her voice softening. "Perhaps that is what we forgot." That night, when the palace lights dimmed and the stars returned, the Queen summoned him privately once again. She stood before a holographic map of her dying planet, glowing veins showing fading energy lines. "The attack was not just rebellion," she said. "It was desperation. Our world is fading faster than we admit." She turned to him, her eyes bright with resolve. "I need to know if your presence here is chance or destiny." Elias met her gaze, uncertain but steady. "I don't know about destiny," he replied, "but I won't stand by if I can help." The Queen stepped closer, her tone both command and plea. "Then you will face a test, not of strength, but of intention." Elias nodded. "Tell me what I must do." The Queen extended her hand, pressing the glowing toy, the same one he had fixed, gnawing into his palm. "This," she said, "is the key to the heart core buried beneath this planet." Her eyes shimmered like twin galaxies. "If your heart is true, it will respond to you again." Elias looked down at the toy, feeling its gentle pulse against his skin. He whispered softly, "Let's find out." As he turned to leave, the princess ran to him, hugging his leg tightly. "Don't get hurt," she said, her small voice trembling. Elias smiled, ruffling her hair. "I'll come back." And as the massive gates opened, revealing a dark passage leading deep beneath the palace, the Queen watched him disappear into the glowing tunnels, her voice barely a whisper in the silence. "If he passes the test, then our fate is bound to his." The Queen's secret request. The tunnels beneath the palace were ancient and alive. Walls of glowing stone stretched endlessly, carved with symbols older than recorded time. Elias walked through the dim light, his hand gripping the small glowing toy, the key the queen had given him. It pulsed faintly, guiding his steps through the darkness like a living compass. The air was warm, heavy with energy, each breath carrying the taste of electricity and dust. Far above, the palace shimmered in silence, while deep below something vast stirred. After hours of descent, Elias reached a chamber unlike any he had ever seen. It was enormous, a hollow heart of the planet itself, filled with rivers of blue light. Floating crystals circled a massive sphere in the center, the heart core of Lumeris. Its surface was cracked, faint light bleeding from its wounds like a dying star. He stood still, awe in his eyes, feeling the low hum that shook the ground beneath him. The sphere looked both alive and broken, a heartbeat slowing with every second. The queen's voice echoed behind him, calm yet filled with sorrow. "You see now what I meant when I said our world is fading." Elias turned and saw her standing at the chamber's entrance, her robes trailing light. He blinked, surprised. "You came here yourself?" The queen stepped forward slowly, her eyes reflecting the dying glow of the core. "This place does not welcome strangers," she said softly. "But perhaps you are no stranger anymore." Elias looked back at the heart core, his voice quiet. "How long has it been like this?" "Too long," the queen answered, "before even I was born." The heart began to dim. She touched the air and golden runes appeared, showing old symbols of the Lumerian Empire's past. Once this world was the brightest jewel of the galaxy. Our ships powered by this living light. Our people united by it, her tone darkened, but greed and pride poisoned us. And the heart began to die. Elias frowned, his engineer's instincts observing the cracks, the pulsing, the unstable currents. "It's not just energy," he said, "it's consciousness, isn't it?" The queen nodded slowly. "Yes, the heart is alive and the spirit of Lumeris itself." He turned to her. "And you think I can fix it?" The queen's gaze softened. "The relic you repaired, the child's toy, was a fragment of this core. When you restored it, the heart reacted," she said. "It recognized you, as if it remembered something long lost." Elias looked at his hands, still bearing the faint sigil that appeared when she touched him. "Why me?" he asked again, his voice low. "I'm just a man, not a god, not a savior." The queen smiled faintly, sadness in her expression. "Sometimes, the stars choose the humble, not the mighty," she said. "You gave light to a child with no thought of reward. That is what the heart understands." Elias walked closer to the core, the toy in his hand glowing brighter with each step. He could feel its pulse matching his heartbeat. "Tell me what you want me to do," he said quietly. The queen stepped beside him, her voice almost a whisper. "The heart needs to awaken, but the ritual requires balance. Light and life, reason and emotion. Two souls bound by trust." Elias looked at her uncertain. "Two souls?" Her eyes met his, calm and steady. "Mine and yours," he blinked, confused. "You mean?" she interrupted softly. "If this fails, my life will end, but if it succeeds, our world will live again." Elias's breath caught. "That's not a request. That's a sacrifice." The queen turned away slightly, her voice distant. "A ruler must be willing to give what others cannot." He shook his head. "There has to be another way." She looked at him again, her tone suddenly soft and human. "If there was, I would not ask you," she said, "but the heart responds only to those pure of spirit, and it already chose you." The silence stretched between them, heavy but tender. Elias looked at the core, then at the queen, at her strength, her sorrow, her unspoken hope. He finally nodded, his voice steady. "Tell me what to do." The queen smiled faintly, a single tear glowing on her cheek like liquid starlight. She extended her hand. "Place your hand over mine, and let the heart judge us." He reached out, their palms meeting, the sigil on his skin glowing again. A deep hum filled the chamber as the heart core awakened. Streams of light burst from its cracks, swirling around them in a storm of gold and blue. The queen closed her eyes, whispering ancient words. The toy sphere in Elias's hand dissolved into pure light. Merging with the core, energy surged through both of them, memories flooding Elias's mind. Visions of Lumeris's birth, its glory, its fall. He saw the queen as a child, standing beneath the first light of the heart. Smiling like her daughter now, he understood then. This wasn't just power. It was love, sacrifice, and history intertwined. The core pulsed faster, brighter, its wound slowly healing. Elias screamed as energy burned through him. But he didn't let go. The queen gritted her teeth, her voice trembling. Hold on, human. Don't let it consume you. Then brute silence. The light dimmed, settling into a calm glow that filled the chamber like sunrise. The cracks on the heart core sealed, and a steady pulse echoed through the planet. The queen opened her eyes slowly, breathing hard but alive. Elias fell to his knees exhausted, the sigil on his hand now shining brighter than ever. The queen knelt beside him, whispering softly, "You did it." He looked up at her weakly. "We did it." For the first time, the eternal queen smiled, truly smiled, her eyes glimmering like a mother's relief. As they stood together, the core's light reflected in their eyes. A new dawn began for Lumeris, and the sound of life returned to its sleeping world. But deep within the heart, something else stirred, and a voice ancient and curious, whispering through the energy currents. The light remembers the kindness of men. The light of two worlds, the sun of Lumeris, rose brighter than it had in centuries. Golden light washed across the floating cities, touching every tower, every sea of clouds, every crystal bridge. For the first time in living memory, the sky shone clear. No storms, no dying hum, only warmth and life returning. The heart core deep beneath the palace pulsed strong again, its rhythm echoing through the ground like the beat of a living planet. Elias awoke in a quiet chamber bathed in soft blue light. His body ached. His hands burned faintly where the sigil glowed like a living star. He remembered the blinding energy, the queen's voice, and the endless storm of light that nearly consumed them both. Now it was calm. He sat up slowly, hearing distant laughter, the laughter of the palace children. Outside his window he saw gardens blooming where once there was only dry metal. Rivers of light ran through the streets, powering machines that had long been silent. He smiled weakly, realizing what they had done. The door opened quietly and the little princess ran inside. Her silver eyes sparkled brighter than ever, her toy restored, glowing faintly in her small hands. "Elias," she cried, jumping toward him, hugging his arm tightly. "You came back." He laughed softly. "I told you I would." Behind her, the queen entered, dressed not in armor this time, but in flowing robes of white and gold. Her aura was gentle, her eyes no longer cold or distant. She looked at him with warmth, the kind only seen in someone who has known both loss and rebirth. "You have done what no one else could," she said quietly. "You gave my world back its heart." Elias looked around, the room glowing faintly with living light. "I only fixed what was broken," he said humbly. The queen shook her head slightly. "No, human. You reminded us what we had forgotten. Compassion." She moved closer, her tone soft but steady. "Our world survived on knowledge, power, and pride, but it was your kindness that reawakened it." Elias smiled faintly. "Funny, where I come from, people think kindness is weakness." The queen's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Then your world is wiser than most, if it still has men like you." The princess climbed beside him, holding the glowing toy between them. "Look, it's even brighter now," she said happily. "It feels alive." Elias touched the sphere, feeling a gentle warmth pulse beneath his fingers. "It is alive," he whispered, "and so are you, little one." The queen watched them silently, her eyes soft, her voice low. "When you touched her hand in that marketplace, I thought it was a curse," she said. "But now I see it was a gift." Elias turned to her, his tone thoughtful. "So, what happens now?" The queen looked toward the balcony where light streamed through. "Now Lumeris will heal," she said, "and we will remember the lesson you taught us." She paused, her voice more personal. "You have a place here, Elias. If you wish it, a home among my people." He stood slowly, still weak but steady. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said softly. "But my kind doesn't belong in palaces. I think I've done my part." The queen tilted her head, a faint sadness in her expression. "Then at least let me give you something before you leave," she said. She placed her hand on his and whispered a few soft words in her native tongue. The sigil on his palm shimmered, transforming into a small star-shaped mark that glowed gently. "When you look at the night sky," she said, "this light will remind you. Lumeris remembers you." Elias smiled. Touched beyond words, he turned toward the little princess, kneeling to her height. "Take care of your people," he said gently, "and never stop smiling." The child nodded proudly, her silver eyes shining like mirrors of the stars. "I will, and when I fix something, I'll think of you," she said. He chuckled softly. Deal. Hours later, the spaceport gates opened. A small Terran shuttle stood ready, engines humming quietly. The Queen and her daughter stood on the glowing platform, watching as Elias walked toward his ship. The crowd of citizens bowed as he passed, the first human ever honored by the royal family. The Queen raised her hand in farewell, her voice carried by the wind. "Go with our light, Elias of Earth," she said. "You came to us as a stranger and leave as a savior." He looked back one last time, smiling. "I just gave a toy to a little girl," he said softly. The Queen smiled back, and the galaxy changed. As his ship rose through the silver clouds, light spread across the horizon. He looked down at the glowing world, its rivers like veins of gold, its skies alive again. The little princess waved from the palace balcony, her toy glowing brightly beside her. He whispered to himself, "Take care of them, kid." Then he turned his ship toward the stars, disappearing into the endless dark. Far behind him, the Queen stood in silence, her eyes following the trail of his ship until it vanished. Beside her, her daughter smiled, holding the toy close. "Will he come back, Mama?" she asked. The Queen looked up at the stars, a faint tear glimmering on her cheek. "When light meets kindness again," she said softly. "He will, above the world of Lumeris." The stars shone brighter that night, and among them, one new light appeared, small but steady, the mark of a human heart that once gave hope to a dying world. It was the light of two worlds, bound forever by a simple act of kindness.